Mark Selby, Chair and CEO of Canada Nickel Company. I'd like to talk to you today in this brief presentation and have you take away three things. Now is the right time to be acquiring nickel stocks in advance of what we think will be a nickel super cycle driven by the EV market. Number two, that this is the right project. This is the largest sulfide discovery since the 70s, and we're unlocking what we think will be the world's largest nickel sulfide district. And then three, the team, this is a team that has advanced project before from resource stage through to fully construction ready. We have a bunch of people who've worked at senior mining companies, including myself, back at Inco 20 years ago when we tried to merge Inco and Falconbridge to build a competitor to BHP and Rio Tinto. And right now I'd like to take you through each one of those messages. First off, in terms of market context, the market desperately needs large-scale, low-carbon sources of nickel to meet the demand both from the EV market and meet continued high growth from stainless steel. The type of deposit that we have, which is large-scale, big tonnage, ultramafics, means that they're made up of rocks that spontaneously absorb carbon. What we're unlocking in Timmins with a bunch of infrastructure, we really believe is going to be the next generation of nickel supply. EV battery demand is going to further accelerate what has always been a long-term, robust demand growth story from nickel. We need double the nickel supply by 2030 versus where we were in 2020. Most analyst forecasts structurally underestimate demand. I saw this with China back in the early 2000s. In 2021, just as an example, nickel demand grew by 17%. Most analysts had a forecast of about a third of that amount. So with that large amount of demand, there's very little visibility on where supply is coming from other than Indonesia. The industry itself really structurally unprepared to deliver supply. Rest of world supply has been shrinking for the last 6 years. More than 100% of supply growth has come from high carbon, Chinese-controlled Indonesian nickel production. Just to give you an idea of when I say high carbon, we're talking about 50 to 80 tons of CO2 per ton of nickel produced with one of the production paths that they use in Indonesia. Because we've seen a decade of underinvestment, the project pipeline outside of Indonesia is largely empty. Just to underscore sort of the lack of project pipeline, the last high-grade nickel sulfide discovery was Voisey's Bay back in 1992. The last high-grade laterite discovery was in the 1980s. We're literally living off 50-year-old resources. We're very fortunate to start the company just 4 years ago with the Crawford nickel project, and what we've expanded into a big nickel district, which we're calling the Timmins Nickel District. Timmins is a very well-established mining camp, very supportive of mining. The First Nations is supportive of mining. We have all the infrastructure in place to advance the project. We're the largest sulfide discovery since the early 1970s, over 5 million tons of contained nickel. We've got 20 plus targets that have 25 times the footprint of Crawford. And this type of deposit, the geophysics allows you to do very highly productive exploration development. And again, these big bulk tonnage deposits, nickel is simply going where copper and oil and gas have already gone. In terms of where we're located, Timmins is just an hour and a half flight north of Toronto. You can see from the map here, we've got all the major infrastructure you need in place: road, rail, power, water. This is an area that has been mining for more than a century. We're very fortunate earlier this year that Anglo American, one of the big diversified mining companies, took a 9.8% stake. Our Crawford project, we're rapidly advancing it. We'll have permits by mid-2025, first production by 2027. It'll be one of the 5 largest nickel sulfide operations globally. We've made a technology breakthrough to be able to store over 1 million tons of CO2 per year as we produce all of this nickel and cobalt. And we're already 1/3 of the way through the permitting process, and we've got great support from the local First Nations community. Our Texman project adds a sweetener of having a small-scale production by 2025. The team, myself, I've been in nickel. As I said, I was part of the head of strategy at Inco when we tried to merge with Falconbridge back in the early 2000s. I've got several members who were with me in my past company where we took a resource stage asset right through to fully permitted and construction ready, one of the few big base metal projects to be permitted last decade. And again, have added a number of people who've got deep experience in terms of advancing and financing these big projects. In terms of where the company's been, we're well financed. We've raised over $100 million. We've hit the market timely. We raised over $50 million when the LME froze 2 years ago. We raised another $45 million off of the back of the Anglo American investment. Few junior companies have 6 analysts covering them and have been covering us since early days. again, given the quality of the project and the team, that's what's attracted this analyst investor coverage. To summarize, the nickel market's entering one of its super cycles that it goes through every 15 to 20 years. There's a massive demand for large-scale, low-carbon sources of nickel, particularly in a safe jurisdiction like North America and Europe. What we have in Crawford and the Timmins Nickel District, we think will be the largest nickel sulfide district ever, at the multiple of the historical leader, Sudbury. With our team's experience, we're well positioned to be able to deliver these projects and deliver what we think is going to be the next generation of nickel. In terms of underscoring the demand for nickel sulfide projects, you don't have to look any further to the fact that BHP, the world's largest mining company, has been actively acquiring over the last 3 years most of the nickel sulfide projects that have been around for a decade. They've also been joined by Andrew Forrest and his private vehicle, Wyloo, which has also made a number of acquisitions of nickel assets that have been around for the past decade. We think those big mining companies are going to be turning their focus to new discoveries like we have with Crawford. Again, in terms of being able to advance these projects, we're in a great window right now where we have government funding from the Canadian government, from the Ontario government, from the U.S. government. We think that'll deliver over $500 million of capital, which will make these projects, even that much more valuable. We think investors will start to really see this through 2023. And as we advance this project towards production in 2027, we think we'll be able to deliver outstanding returns for shareholders through that entire period.